It might be considered the most exciting playoff series of the 1970s, and the team that was expected to win not only lost, they lost big time at home in most of the key games. Now, this was the Bobby Orr, Esposito-led Bruins against the Jean Beliveau-led Montreal Canadiens. It was basically, youth versus experience, and the youth couldn't knock off experience. This is probably not say one of the biggest chokes in Boston history, the biggest deceptions. Now the Bruins finished first in the league in '71 with 121 points. Now the Canadiens were third in the East Division with 97. This was the 15 playoff series between two teams, with Montreal winning 12 of the 14 previous matchups. They last met in the '69 Stanley Cup semis, which Montreal won in 6 games with pretty well the same lineup for Boston in this series. Now, Boston won 5 of the 6 games in this year's regular season series. Now, Bruins were defending Stanley Cup champions, of course. Now, the Habs were matched against Boston and one of the most extraordinary upsets in sports history. Ken Dryden, then still not a rookie, but close enough, was hot and gold for the Canadiens, and he ousted the Bruins in 7 contests. Game 2 featured what many perceive as one of the greatest comebacks in sports history, with the Bruins leading 5-1 late in the second period and 5-2 heading to third. The Canadiens scored 5 goals in the final session to win 7-5. Now, there was some talk if there was a speech in the dressing room. We're not sure it was Alan McNeil said it directly or Mahavlish or Richard. And basically they were saying, yeah, we're behind 5-2, but Boston is a sieve. We can make a comeback. We'll get the first goal. Sure enough, Beliveau scored twice and the rest in the history. Now, prominent Canadian sports journalist Red Fisher lists the Canadiens' comeback in this contest his 8th most memorable moment. He's over 49 years of covering hockey. I say this: I was 6 years old when it happened, and when it did happen, I said to myself, "This is completely bizarre." This team, Boston, had so many players. They could run 5 lines. Most of the defensemen were strong in the offense: Espo, Kenny Hodge, Cashman, Busick, Teddy Green, Johnny McKenzie. Now, game 1 in Boston. Boston took a 1-0 lead on Bobby Orr's first of the series. Now, in the second period, Ferguson tied it up 1-1 before Cashman in the second and Stanfield in the third wrapped up the scoring. Now, Jerry Cheevers made 30 saves in the contest, while Dryden, showing some of his what he called these emergency miracles, had 39 saves. Now, game 2 was kind of freaky. Conway led the Habs early with an opener at 3:32 in the first. Then Bobby Orr, with his second, and Teddy Green scored back-to-back to make it 2-1 after the first. Now, in the second period, the first 8 minutes were all Boston. Johnny McKenzie scored in the power play. Cashman got his second at 6:31, while Derek Sanderson scored to make it 5-1. Now, here were the worm turns, ladies and gentlemen. Henri Richard scored at 15:33 at the time. A lot of people said, it's just going to make the score a little bit better. Little did we know the momentum in the rest of the second period. Montreal dominated the last 5 minutes of that stanza. Now, going into third, what really hurt Boston, he took a penalty early, and Jean Beliveau scored his first of the postseason at 2:58. And as the Nesson announcer said at the time, or the Boston sports affiliate, it became nail-biting time at 4:22 when Beliveau scored a second. Now, the next 9 minutes were all Montreal. Jacques Lemaire scored at 9:59 to make it 5-5. John Ferguson, in a great counter, made it 6-5, 15-23, while Frank Mahovlich, on a 5-mile breakaway with a slap shot that probably is the hardest shot he ever hit, scored at 18:40. Now, the key point of this contest, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, Eddie Johnson started for Boston in that game. He was a sieve in the third period, giving up 5 goals, while Ken Dryden stopped 31-36, and after those 5 goals, he shut the door. Now, game 3 in Montreal was Boston early. He led 1-0 after the first on a goal by Esposito, actually his first in the series, while Mahovlich and Jacques Laperriere scored in the second period to make it 2-1, and then Mahovlich had his third in the series at 3:55 for the insurance marker, and they held on the rest of the way. Now, Cheevers made 28 saves in this contest, while Dryden made 37 saves. Now, the turning point of the series for a lot of people, he felt that this is where Boston was going to take over. Mahovlich, with his fourth, made it 1-0 on the power play, in the first, but from there it was all Boston. Bobby Orr scored at 11:01 in the second, and then Mike Shaky Walton at 18:26 in the power play, 2-1 after the first. Even though Orr scored at 37 seconds to make it 3-1. Cornway made it 3-2 with 6:13, but Stanfield and Orr scored on a shorthand in 1957, made it away. This was a rare time a Boston defenseman scored a hat trick in a playoff game, 5-2 for the victors. Dryden had a terrible game, only 29 saves, while Jerry Cheevers had 26 saves to take the victory. Now, in Ken Dryden's The Game, he said that basically this is where he thought the series was over. In Game 5 in Boston, Wayne Cashman scored early to give Boston a 1-0 lead. Cornway scored at 5:38 to make it 1-1. But from then on, it was all Boston. 9:32, Esposito on the power play. Then Shaky at 16:45. Second period, McKenzie with his second, while Eddie Walsfall got a shorthander in the second. Third period, the both teams exchanged 2 goals. Mahovlich and Ferguson at 1:55 and 8:19. Music made it 6-3, while Kenny Hodge, also his first of the campaign, scored at 15:57. Now, Dryden had 49 saves in this game. Boston really put it on, while Cheevers only had to stop 24-27. Now, here's the deal. Game 6, we didn't see this coming at all because it ended up being 8-3 Montreal. Now, Peter Mahovlich scored his first in the series at 6:36. Espo scored a power play a few seconds later, and we're saying, hey, this could be over. But 11-12, which I consider the goal of the series, Richard's second put Montreal ahead 2-1. Stanfield tied it up early in the second at 5:57, but from there was all Montreal. Lemaire on the power play with his second. J.C. Tremblay at 14:39. Then Richard, he's third at 5:14 of the third. Then Mahovlich at 14:46. Peter, of course. Then Sanderson, he's second. Tardif at 17:15. And Jacques Leperrier on the power play, 19:34. 8-3 for Montreal. Now, Cheevers was put through the ringer. He only saved 35 of 43, while Kenny had 29 saves on 32 shots. Now, game 4 back in Boston, it was really close after the first period. Frank Mahovlich, who I think it was the start of the series, tied it up at 14:48 after Ken Hodge first second at 6:50. And of all people, Réjean Houle, he's first in the series at 17:38, put Montreal ahead 2-1. Now in the third, J.C. Tremblay with a series winner 15:44. Busick scored at 1:02 in the third to make it close, but Mahovlich again scored early in the third at 14 seconds. And 7 goals in 7 games. He was the star of the series. Now, ironically, Boston had much more shots on goal than Montreal that game. 46 saves for Kenny and only 30 for Cheevers. So the thing is, how did Boston lose the series? This is a set. Both teams combined for over 50 goals. But you notice on the score sheet, ladies and gentlemen, after Bobby Orr scored in that game that made it 2-2, he never scored for the rest of the series. And I'm not saying that's the fault, but Esposito only had 3 counters the whole series. It wasn't a balanced attack. But you look at Montreal. Houle scored, Tremblay, Frank and Peter Mahovlich, Tardif scored, Leperrier, Henri Richard, Ferguson had 3 goals in the series. Cornway scored. So you look at the balanced attack here. And Belleville, ironically, never scored in the last 6 games. So that's how the series went. The big stars for Boston and Montreal were pretty well held off the score sheet. But like Frank Mahovlich, you could probably stop Belleville, but you couldn't stop Mahovlich. And Frank Mahovlich said in published reports after that, when he was touring Canada during his senatorial years, that's probably the best series he ever played, other than 73. So that's a breakdown of who scored what and who did the what in the Boston series. I'd like to see a DVD of this, either by CBC or the Boston Networks, which is now Nessun, the whole series, just to show how an offensive team against an offensive team the team with the more experience, like Montreal had JC and everybody. But that's JC was the unofficial quarterback of Montreal's defense at the time. This was well before Larry Robinson and Lapointe and Savard didn't score in the series at all. It was just the players up front. But role players like Tardif and Houle, played a factor as well. And it was a pretty freaky series. But I always go back to April 8th, 71, where the big comeback. It's amazing to see the Montreal Canadiens. That's why I'm not a Toronto Maple Leaf fan. There's no person can make this up. What happened in that series? Only the glorious ones could have bet Boston that year. Anyway, so ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing here, we're a hockey podcast. Let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share.